Leaf mold might be the most powerful soil improvement most gardens will ever have access to. Yet every autumn, millions of gardeners rake it up, bag it, and throw it away. Then, a few months later, those same gardens struggle with dry soil, compacted beds, and plants that constantly need feeding just to keep growing. That contradiction exists because leaf mold has been misunderstood for decades. It gets lumped into the same category as compost or mulch, when in reality, it does something completely different inside the soil. Once you understand what leaf mold actually is and how it works, the way you build soil starts to change. Leaf mold is not compost, and that distinction matters more than people realize. Most organic gardening advice revolves around compost, which is a bacterial process driven by heat, nitrogen, and rapid decomposition. Leaf mold works almost the opposite way. Instead of bacteria doing the work, fungi slowly break down the structure of leaves over time. That slow fungal digestion transforms piles of leaves into something that behaves more like forest soil than traditional compost. When leaves sit in a damp pile for 12 to 18 months, fungi begin breaking down lignin and cellulose. Those are the rigid structures that make leaves tough and durable. As fungi process those compounds, the leaves collapse into a dark, soft, crumbly material that feels almost like a sponge. At that point, the leaves are no longer really leaves. They have become a fungal-rich organic material that changes how soil holds water, how roots move through it, and how nutrients stay available. That is the real reason experienced growers value leaf mold. Its biggest strength isn't really about feeding plants. It's all about controlling water. In backyard gardens, raised beds, and containers, inconsistent moisture is honestly one of the biggest sources of plant stress. Soil dries out way too quickly during hot weather, then becomes saturated during heavy watering or rainfall. Roots really struggle in those conditions because they need oxygen just as much as they need moisture. Leaf mold solves that problem in a very specific way. Finished leaf mold can actually hold about 4 to 5 times its own weight in water, yet it rarely ever gets soggy. The fungal structure creates thousands of tiny pores that trap moisture while still allowing air to circulate through the soil. This balance between water retention and aeration is extremely difficult to achieve with most materials. Peat moss, for example, holds water but compacts over time. Coconut coir holds water but can stay too wet. Compost provides nutrients but doesn't always stabilize moisture. Leaf mold, though, behaves more like the soil you'd find on a forest floor, where the ground stays consistently damp without becoming waterlogged. When about 20 to 30% leaf mold is mixed into garden soil, the difference becomes noticeable very quickly. In one raised bed I tested, a standard 4 by 8 foot bed planted with tomatoes and peppers, it needed watering every 2 days during the hottest part of the summer. After incorporating roughly 2 inches of finished leaf mold into the top 6 inches of soil, watering dropped to just twice a week. The plants grew larger and showed fewer signs of heat stress. That improvement honestly had nothing to do with fertilizer. The soil just held water more efficiently. Another benefit appears in container gardens, where soil conditions are much harder to control. Containers heat up rapidly under direct sunlight, and the limited soil volume means moisture evaporates quickly. Roots experience constant cycles of drying and rehydrating, which slows growth and weakens plants. Leaf mold acts as a stabilizer in those situations. Mixing roughly 1 part leaf mold with 2 parts potting mix creates a growing medium that holds moisture longer while staying loose and breathable. Roots expand more easily, and watering becomes far more forgiving. Tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and eggplants respond particularly well to this kind of soil structure because their roots prefer steady moisture rather than extreme fluctuations. There is another advantage to leaf mold that rarely gets mentioned, and it relates to soil biology. Most garden soils lean heavily toward bacterial activity because compost and fertilizers encourage bacterial growth. Bacteria are important, but many long-lived plants and woody crops perform better in soils that contain stronger fungal networks. Leaf mold introduces exactly that. As fungi break down the leaves, they create a web of microscopic filaments called hyphae. These networks move through the soil, breaking down organic matter that bacteria struggle to process. Over time, this releases minerals that would otherwise remain locked inside woody debris and organic residues. This fungal activity also improves soil aggregation, which means small soil particles begin binding together into larger crumbs. Those crumbs create the loose, friable soil structure that gardeners often describe as rich or healthy soil. The interesting part is how this effect builds over time. During the first season, leaf mold improves moisture retention and reduces compaction. By the second season, fungal communities expand and soil texture becomes noticeably softer. By the third season, many gardeners notice their beds becoming darker, easier to dig, and far more productive with less effort. That long-term improvement is exactly how natural ecosystems maintain fertility. Forests rarely receive fertilizer. Instead, layers of fallen leaves break down slowly each year, feeding fungal networks that maintain the soil structure indefinitely. Leaf mold is essentially a simplified version of that natural system, making it requires far less effort than traditional composting. Leaves need moisture, oxygen, and patience. That is really all. The simplest method is to pile leaves inside a basic wire bin or just stack them in a corner of the yard where they can stay slightly damp. Moisture should feel similar to a wrung-out sponge. If the leaves are completely dry, decomposition slows dramatically. But if they remain lightly moist, fungi begin colonizing them naturally. Shredding the leaves, speeds the process significantly. Whole leaves may take about 2 years to fully break down, while shredded leaves often become usable within 12 months. Some gardeners like to mix a small amount of finished compost into the pile, about 10% by volume. This introduces microorganisms that help jump-start the decomposition process. Eventually, the leaves lose their recognizable shape and become a dark brown material with a mild, earthy smell. The texture should be soft and crumbly, almost like the soil found in mature forests. At that point, the leaf mold is ready to use. In garden beds, spreading 1 to 2 inches across the surface works extremely well. Earthworms and soil organisms slowly incorporate it into the soil without disturbing plant roots. Raised beds respond well when leaf mold is mixed directly into the upper soil layer. A ratio of roughly 1 part leaf mold to 3 parts existing soil usually produces noticeable improvements within a single season. Containers benefit from smaller additions. Blending 20 to 30% leaf mold into potting mix helps prevent compaction while improving moisture retention. Even hydroponic growers have started experimenting with leaf mold extracts. By placing a handful of finished leaf mold into 5 gallons of aerated water and allowing it to steep for about 24 hours, it is possible to create a mild microbial solution that introduces beneficial fungi into otherwise sterile growing media like cocoa coir. This does not replace nutrient solutions, but it can improve root zone biology in systems that lack microbial life. One important point needs to be clear though. Leaf mold is not a fertilizer. Heavy feeding crops such as corn, squash, and cabbage will still require nutrients from compost, organic fertilizers, or mineral amendments. Leaf mold does something different. It improves the soil's ability to hold and manage those nutrients once they are present. It works more like infrastructure than plant food. Without good soil structure, nutrients wash away, dry out, or become unavailable to plant roots. With improved soil structure, those same nutrients remain stable and accessible for longer periods. This is one reason gardens that regularly use leaf mold often require fewer inputs over time. The soil simply becomes more efficient. There is also a resilience factor that becomes obvious after a few seasons. Soils rich in fungal organic matter handle drought more effectively, recover faster from heavy rain, and maintain biological activity even when weather conditions become difficult. Plants growing in that kind of soil experience fewer extremes, which translates into healthier growth and more reliable harvests. All of this comes from a resource that literally falls from trees every year. For millions of years, forests have built fertile soil by allowing leaves to decompose slowly on the ground. Modern gardening often tries to replace that system with purchased products, fertilizers, and constant soil amendments. Yet one of the most effective soil builders available is something many people still consider yard waste. Understanding how materials like leaf mold work is what turns gardening from a constant struggle into a system that improves itself year after year. If you enjoy learning practical techniques that make growing food easier and more productive, subscribe to Gardening Simplified and share this video with another gardener who wants healthier soil and better harvests. The more we understand how soil actually works, the easier it becomes to grow incredible food right at home.